Hello, Scapers. Welcome to this week's weekly RuneScape Q&A, coming to you live from my house. We are all remote today, as we have been for the last few weeks. I'm JD, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Mod Mick.
Hi.
Introduce yourself. Go on.
Mod Mike with my cup of tea.
Mod Warden.
Hey guys.
And Mod Hypnos.
Hey, aka Mod ASMR to a few of you.
That is definitely a stream that we still need to do. Welcome everyone. Hope you're all keeping safe. We are doing today a spring update for you all. So what we'd like to do really is do these kinds of live streams every sort of 3 months or so, where we get the guys who are in charge to come on to talk about what is going on within the game and kind of give us a little bit of an insight as to how content that has come out over the last few weeks has been received, and how we've gone about making it, and also what you guys can look forward to in the coming weeks and months as well, and what kinds of things we're currently working on. So I thought I'd try and break the ice a little bit today with a little game, a little isolation game. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Just raise your hand if you have done any of these things since working from home. Have you taken on a new hobby? Okay. Spill, Warden.
I just got a soldering kit in, and I've started working on mechanical keyboards.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Custom
Mike?
keyboard.
I have been dungeon mastering for my family in some old school TSR D&D.
Oh, nice. We were talking about how we could get a RuneScape themed D&D sorted at some point, and I know Mod Spear's quite passionate about it. So perhaps watch this space in the future. We might get you as a dungeon master. Okay, who has done a conference call in their pajamas? Be honest.
Wearing pajamas right now.
And also, have you had a conference call that has been interrupted by a colleague's pet or child?
Yes. Sorry.
Have you had a conference call that's been interrupted by your own child or pet?
Yes. My cat the other day decided that he didn't like me ignoring him, so he leapt up on the chair and sunk his claws into the back of my new chair. So I was very sad.
I've had a bet. I can raise your cat story. I've had to run across the camera in a conference call holding my cat that was throwing up. So that was fun. Yeah, we were all having fun at home, and I kind of wanted to just touch on quickly before we start with the news in brief and the questions. Actually, I wanted to direct this to Mod Warden. Really, obviously, everybody is working from home at the moment at Jagex. I think we've actually acclimatized quite quickly to it, but I also wanted to just ask from your perspective how things are currently going, and in terms of productivity, what kind of level we're at.
Yeah, we're at really high levels of productivity. I'd say within a matter of days, we had a company of over 400 people and partners in distributed development globally that were all functioning from home. It was a lot of hard work. Our IT team just totally killed it trying to get all the requests handled, and then it's like we trickled in, and I'd probably say some of the stragglers in there were we're just resolving technical issues and so on. So it was pretty cool to see, and a lot of respect for the company on how we're able to do that. And when you do this too, you're kind of unpacking years of doing things a certain way, right? I think we challenge ourselves a lot on this, and that was really good to see.
Good. I mean, I think, as I say, from my perspective, and we talk about cats interrupting. Hello, welcome my cat to the live stream. I'm going to try and get her off, but she doesn't like doing that. So bear with me 1 second. She might be back in a little bit, but that was Phoebe. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I think we've acclimatized quite quickly as a company, and from your perspective, Warden, we're in a good place.
Yeah, content-wise, right? Like we had archaeology crossing roads here, so this was getting the last RC issues resolved, and that happened pretty awesome, and then pretty uninterrupted forms of content. I know we had I think the week of kind of us hitting home, we had to delay our update that week by a day or two, but I think other than that, it's been pretty solid. Got a number of Yak tracks out, mobile updates been going out, and we still.
I think if we can get a new skill out, then if we can get a new skill out under lockdown, then that's not bad going.
Good. Okay, cool. So I'll just quickly go into some news in brief. Obviously, we announced on Friday that the iOS closed beta was going to launch on next Monday, the 11th at 5 p.m. I don't know, Hypnos, if you had any updates for us on that front. It's obviously an exciting time for us.
Yeah, we're definitely all excited on our side to get this out. There's always, as always, there are a few kinks that sometimes pop up close to the 11th hour, but we're still tracking pretty good. But if anything happens, well, you guys will be the first ones to know for sure. But otherwise, we're still pretty much set for that date moving forward.
Cool.
This is a big moment. For many streams, we get tons of questions. When's iOS coming? And we've always been saying, hey, we're making builds. We're trying to resolve some of the compliance issues. We're at that point now, right? This is a good moment in time for us, and going to be really keen on seeing what the results are. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you want any more information about the iOS beta, if you head to the website, you'll be able to find out all of the information about the beta next Monday. So how you can get involved. This week's game update was a ninja-tastic affair. So there was what we call a scattershot strike, which is taking different areas and focusing on, rather than one big area, focusing on lots of little individual areas that were aiming to give you loads and loads of quality of life. So highlights of that include, obviously, the chronotes can now be added to or used from the currency pouch in game. There were lots of land out of time changes and Grace the Elves improvements as well, and also stone spirits as well. They've a lot of the Slayer monsters and bosses have had their stone spirit drop tables reworked as well, which I think was a pretty mammoth ninja update, to be perfectly honest with you guys. And I didn't think that we would have that much going out, if I'm being honest. So I'm always I know the aim of the ninja team is to surprise and delight, but I think when you're also surprising and delighting the staff, I think that's always a good move as well.
I think when I first was getting started, I got a lot of feedback from the community saying, "Hey, content cadence isn't the greatest," or it's like, "Hey, you never go back to past releases and fix things up or do more with them. Can you change that?" I think we're starting to deliver a bit on that promise, and getting the ninja team kind of reinvigorated with new focus, new mission, staffed in the right way was a big key to that.
Absolutely. And if you want any more information about yesterday's game update, just type in !game update in the chat. It's in the title, and you can get all the information, all of the drop tables in the patch notes as well. Just a couple of other bits before we go into the meat of the questions. We're part of the UK Games for Carers campaign, which was launched last Wednesday. If you are in the NHS or you know somebody who is in the NHS and they would love some free membership, we're giving away 3 months of membership to those people who are on the NHS front line. Just work for the NHS, doesn't matter whether you're on the front line or not. So if you are interested, just type in !NHS into the chat and you'll be able to find out the details and how you can redeem it. And then finally, we'll come back to this in a little bit, but Double XP Live is coming this Friday.
You're not confused, are you, JD?
We'll come to that in a second. We'll be that's a bank holiday for you UK folk, so make the most of it. We're going live at 12 midday. 12 midday BST, I believe. I think that's 11 game time, I think. So we'll be going live on Friday. Make the most of it. It's obviously, whilst everybody is in lockdown at the moment, it's a really good opportunity to kind of get those levels up. and we'll come back to double XP live in a short period of time. So I wanted to get into the meat of the live stream with you guys, and we're going to kind of split this into 4 different sections. So we're going to first talk about live content, which people might previously have recognized as the Epic team. And what we wanted to talk about first of all was obviously archaeology. It's something that since we've got you guys last on the live stream, I think we last got you on sort of in sort of January time, something like that. What we've launched a brand new skill, which seems to have gone down quite well with players, and with bringing a lot of players back. So I wanted to kind of get your take on how you felt the launch went, how you feel like the subsequent weeks have gone, and what else there is in store. Mike, I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah. So we're obviously really happy with lots of things about archaeology. So like you said, the number of players that have come back to the game recently since we launched it is surpassed what we expected. We planned this whole thing a good couple of years ago now, and part of that planning is kind of modeling out what we expect it to do, or what we'd consider it to be a success. So it's definitely smashed all of those targets. It's performed way better than we anticipated. Obviously, some of that is down to the circumstances at the moment, with more people available because of global lockdowns. But even taking that out of the equation, it's still definitely overperformed from what we'd hoped it was going to achieve, which is great news. The team did a fantastic job, absolutely knocked it out of the park. I mean, for me, some of the other things that were, particularly notable or we're really happy about is, just the gameplay itself. It's really addictive. It's really compelling. You get into it and it just hooks you in. And I think that's one of the best things about that skill and how it just fits the game so well. I know when we first planned it, there was some concern about, is this really going to be exciting enough? Is it going to have enough kind of pizzazz or whatever? But I think it really does that. So it kind of delivers all of that. And then I think the other thing for me, that probably the most important thing, I think it's given everybody a kind of renewed sense of confidence and ambition that we can take on things of that scale and do it well. Because again, there were some concerns, it's going to be a long project, it's going to be a big one, lots of, resource goes into it, a lot of planning, a lot of art, and it's really got to deliver the right results. And I think, so far, everything we've seen is, really positive, and it's just given everybody, the whole team, a kind of renewed kind of level of confidence that we can do these sort of things. So expansion level content again, if you like. So yeah, super happy.
Definitely back up the shifting the release date out for the right reason was the right call. Allowed us to do so many different polish items, build a better, stronger launch campaign. We've had a lot of new team members join even towards the end of Archaeology, and that made a massive impact on the contributions to the different areas. And then just polish and bug fixing, and just really happy with that result.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think one of my favorite parts of the skill is just how intertwined it is with the story and the lore. I don't think anybody was really expecting it to be quite as lore heavy as it was. And one of my questions to you guys is actually, is that an intention with content moving forward of kind of that scale, that we would kind of embed a lot of lore-based content within it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think...
yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I should have directed that to someone in particular. Yeah. Sorry, Warden, you go
first.
That's
fine. I mean, this goes back to some of the conversations we've had on the couch with Mod Osborne, and talking about the kind of narrative arc of the lore behind everything, and wanting to bring that kind of story to the fore. And that was really a big part of the plan, not just with archaeology, but with some of the other things that came afterwards. And we're going to see that continue, because it's something we're really kind of committed to. It underpins the whole game. It's really important. So yeah, this is going to be a continuing theme.
Yeah, and just to kind of tie into that is, it's like, I know I get a lot of questions asked about, roadmap presentation, where we're going, that sort of thing. And this is part of the thing that I personally like about game development, is some of the surprise elements that we can bring. With us putting the brakes on archaeology when we did, allowed us to build some additional narrative into future things that we're doing. And I don't want to reveal all those secrets all in one go, and kind of break that up, because we want to try and do something with this that maybe players haven't seen from us in a while.
Yeah, one of the taglines was "Dig Deep, War is Coming." Do you guys want to say anything about that right now?
Well, it's a secret, man. Yeah, what could be coming?
Digging.
Yeah, that's right.
Sounds exciting though.
Nobody's found it yet.
I'll push you guys harder on a later live stream.
It's very deep. You have to dig further.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, obviously we do get a lot of comments around quest content and supporting sort of that heavier lore focus. And for me, this signals a slight sort of change in direction, but I think it's a positive change in direction. But I didn't know if you wanted to comment on sort of quest related content as well at this stage.
Yeah, we've got a lot of pillars to the game, right? We're working on the next quest right now. That's well in production. Super keen on getting that out there. We've got things like the activity pets. They're on its way, but still in production. And then our next big piece of content after that, which we don't want to take the wrapper off it. That'll all be in time, but that's happening. And we care about things like skilling. Skilling is and it comes in a variety of different forms. And we love the combat side of things. So that's all moving along.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that all types of players will be served.
Yeah, we want to make the game accessible and a little bit for everyone.
Sorry, we're talking over each other. There's a bit of lag going on, so
lag. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. It's just there is a bit of a delay, so apologies if we jump in over the top of each other. Yeah, I was just going to add that probably one thing that we've not done so well on the last couple of years is having that kind of consistent lore throughout the game. That covers everything, whether it's quest, a skill update, MTX content like cosmetics, the events that happen in the game. So we are making a sort of conscious effort to kind of bring more of that storyline together, so everything's grounded, feels like it belongs. So hopefully you'll see changes there that people will be happy about, and those are going to start much with the next few updates that you see coming soon.
Cool. And we've started to change up our design process around that as well, right? So everything is now starting with what we call a narrative brief. So we're building the creative and the narrative right from the beginning for everything that we're doing new.
Okay, cool. So what's next for Archaeology then? Is this, we've done a lot of post-release sort of touching up of the content. Is this something that we'll look to be doing more often? And in terms of Archaeology, how long can players kind of expect to see that kind of level of focus on Archaeology?
So the post-release stuff's really important. Yes. This is kind of industry standard practice that in live ops games that you would actually continue the work after the release and make sure everything's as it needs to be, get over any kind of teething problems, any niggles. So we need to put the time into it to allow that to happen properly. And I think with Archaeology, everybody's been really happy that we've made the time to do that. Hasn't always happened in the past, and some things have been kind of left unfinished. And again, under Mod Warden, who was very strict, we are going to do this, we're going to do it right, we're going to allow the time. So we've made a big effort there, I think. And then, what's coming next is still pretty early days. So, we're about sort of 5 weeks in now. We're actually looking at a number of options that people have been coming with about, where we could take it, what else we could add to it. So I can't really give any details of those yet. We're still kind of evaluating them. But, we want to see what's the next thing we can do with Archaeology content. So, yeah, expect some news as soon as we can do that.
And the way we got our Ninja team set up right now is that, they could easily get on a strike if we found the right thing for them to work on. And so that's a good outlet for the shorter and medium term content pieces.
Yep. We'll come back to Ninja in a few minutes' time, and we'll get Hypnos on as well, talking about Ninja. Don't worry, he will be asked some questions in a second. So now that Archaeology has been released. You mentioned there is we're currently working on a new quest and activity pets. Is there anything else the team are currently working on, or is that kind of, are we looking to focus our energies on making sure that the things that we do are the best that we can make them? Warden, I'll go to you for that one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's I think to your point, we'll do less, more of the right important things, have stronger outcomes from them. They'll be a lot more focused, a lot higher quality overall. We set an incredible new standard with archaeology. We've got to find the best ways to do that or better, and start making sure that we're hitting all the different areas that players really enjoy, and cycle through that. And then obviously, we've got a fairly strong quarterly cadence right now. That's some of the patterns we started putting in place over the last couple of months. We've got the act track elements in between, lots more improvements and changes, and kind of LinkedIn narrative bits that we can do there. But lots of good opportunity.
Okay, great. All right, conscious of time, so I'm going to move on to Ninja. And here's where we bring in Mod Hypnos. So back in January, we kind of re-announced the rejuvenation of the Ninja team and the re-emergence from the shadows. And since then, we've had 4 strikes. So the quality of life first strike, drop cleaner improvements, shattered worlds, and yesterday the scatter. The scattered strike that the scattered shot strike, sorry, that we did yesterday. What have your thoughts been on the impact of Ninja since we've kind of brought them back into the sort of shadowed limelight? Warden, I'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Hypnos.
Sorry, got a bit of lag there. Yeah, just there's going to be things that we're going to kind of build up and kind of amplify in there. We'll even bring some marketing creative into that mix. I think people are starting to see what we're doing there, things like Shattered Worlds and so on. So that helps us talk about our content in new ways. When I looked over the releases that we did over the last year, like in year we do at least 50 week to week, and some additional hot fixing and everything in between. I saw a lot of elements in there that, hey, you know what, I think we could have framed this a little bit differently and talk about it a little bit differently, or group the content up into stronger beats. So I think that part was an important element. And then, it's like I've got a product manager supporting the team, better production support. I got some of our scrappiest designers and content creators on there. That's an important piece, right? We've got a lot of variety of sources that we're taking a look at there, and then on top of that, we just got a lot of energy, a lot of player feedback on it. So
yeah, and the other great piece of that too is when we look at core experience updates for the quality of life stuff, we're looking at bigger, sort of larger, longer term things, right? But when we look at it from a Ninja perspective, and as you were saying earlier, like this kind of renewed focus on it, it gives us like this direct channel from a community perspective to really just get in there like day to day, and it's been really refreshing for the team, as a whole, to definitely work day to day with players like yourselves, and we can feel that it's really just kind of getting better for every launch that we're actually doing. It's been noticeable, and it's been much more sort of exciting on our side to be able to engage day to day with that also.
Yeah, I mean, quality of life is something that we've talked about before, and it's something that I know, Warden, you're particularly passionate about. Is there anything that we are doing, having seen kind of the success of the first sort of 2 or 3 strikes, that we're doing to kind of double up on that support for Ninja? It seems that quite a lot of the content that they're producing is positively received.
Yeah, so what I'd like us to get to is a more frequent update coming from Ninja. It's not that they're not working hard enough already, but it's like, we work out kinks in our process, but I like to see it a little more frequently. Maybe a little more dynamic in that case as well.
Okay. Anyone else want to add anything at all?
Ninjas are awesome.
Okay,
Best team.
cool. So in terms of the next targets, we talked about surprise and delight. We talked about making sure that we try and keep their content as behind sort of under wraps as possible. Is there any hints that anyone can give us to future targets for the ninjas for their strikes? Hypnos, anything that you wanna hint at?
See, now you're just testing me. Yeah, we've been looking at like a few things, but I think what's most important to us are the ones that will give us kind of the most impact from a community perspective, especially with the things that players engage in like day to day. We've been looking at things such as the Grand Exchange, things like parts of the UI where we can actually improve, and make it a little bit better, more accessible, things like that. I don't want to spoil anything, so just have to tell you guys to stay tuned, basically.
Oh, you tease.
Something might
okay.
get.
Okay, so one of the other things that's sort of related to Ninja is around the PAGS initiative, so the Player Advocacy Groups initiative, and that's something that since we last spoke to you guys that we've announced to the player base. General kind of TLDR, I suppose, is that we're enlisting a group of player advocates to join, sort of talk to us more regularly, get feedback from the community, and be able to kind of, I suppose, guide some of the development decisions that we might make. And I know that the first one is focused around Ninja. Looks like somebody's got a call. One of the first ones is focused around Ninja, and sort of trimming the backlog, so to speak, and going through the Ninja backlog. Do we have any indication of how successful that first PAG has been at this stage? You Hypnos first, because you probably had the most sort of interaction with it.
Yeah, at the moment we're still kind of getting our feet wet there, right? And we're still looking at the best ways to kind of set this up and have a framework moving forward for it. So, it's again, like touching base on what I said earlier, like this, it's been great that we have like not only a direct connection from a player perspective there, but also another channel for some of our most engaged players and our most hardcore players to be able to kind of help us actually deliver what it is that players actually want. So it's been great on that front, but we're still working out kinks. And how far along we should actually move forward with it and things like that. So it's still kind of a work in progress, but it's definitely one of the things we're really kind of looking into to really give players the best channel for delivering the things that they want.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note this is kind of, we're halfway through the process for the first one, and when we have, I think there've been a couple of news posts that we've put out over the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks around the PAGs and introducing you guys to some of the people who will be taking part in it, and also giving a kind of a lowdown on what kinds of things have been discussed so far. The plan is that once the PAG is complete, we'll then collate all of that stuff, and we'll tell you a little bit about how the process has been and what kinds of things we've been discussing, and hopefully any outcomes that have come from it as well. So the other thing that's really important to note is that we would love to have your suggestions for quality of life updates as well. We'd love to be able to get your insight into the things, your pain points in the game, and an understanding as to how we can improve them. So if you type in !Ninja into the chat, it will send you a link to the dojo, and we'd love to have your suggestions in there. I think the guys trim through that pretty much weekly at the moment, and then allocate them to the Ninja backlog. So hopefully you'll have seen, as I say, some of this stuff already coming into game, and the aim is to kind of keep that funneling through over the next few months.
I think
Okay.
Kalai was telling me she had so many submissions in the Ninja Dojo, she had to sort of bar the doors a little bit because there were like several thousand that came in straight away. So there is no shortage of stuff for us to work on.
I think I might have opened the floodgates again. Sorry, Kalaya.
No, it's great.
So let's talk about Ninja I think the ninjas, we were talking about perhaps getting them on a stream in the next few weeks as well to talk about some of the processes that they go through, and a little bit more about some of the people within the ninja team as well. So watch out for that. But we'll move on to the live ops team, just to talk a little bit more about that in detail. First order of the day is double XP live. Obviously that is hitting this Friday, and I wanted to really get a chance to speak to you guys around some of the discussions that we've had with players, and some of the feedback that we've had with players around double XP live, the rebranding of it, the reason for doing it at this particular period, but first of all, I wanted to get your sense as to actually the format of it. How happy are we kind of with the format of double XP live, and is it something that, as I say, we're looking to make any amendments to in coming iterations of it?
Yeah, so I can talk to this. So overall, yeah, we're really happy with the new format. This was introduced back in November, actually, and I think we came on streams November and December and kind of explained some of the thinking why. Just to reiterate that we were concerned about the level of intense gameplay that the old format of double XP weekend required, and we wanted to come up with a new way of people still feeling the same benefit from it, but not feeling like it's a really bad thing if you miss out on it, or you have to reorganize your life around it, or you've got to grind for 48 hours non-stop. Those are things we considered unhealthy, in terms of it puts other things in your personal life secondary to the game, and we just didn't feel that was right. So we introduced the new format where there's a quota of double XP that is spread out over 10 days. Initially that started at, was it 36 hours in November when we did it, and then based on the feedback we got from the community, we extended that to 48 hours when we ran it again in February. That seemed to hit the spot in terms of the level of time people were ploughing into it, which is pretty similar to what we saw. It's just more spread out now, so people are able to spread it over 2 weekends, as an example. So in that sense, we're pretty happy with it. At the same time, it became a bit confusing because it was still called a double XP weekend. It was then double XP weekend extended, and I was also I felt that it needed a bit of a refresh in terms of how we presented it. So we've had Montez, one of our really cool designers, work on a new logo, which I think is awesome. We've given it a new name. The idea is to make it more exciting, a bit more fun. So we're calling it double XP live. I will hold my hand up because I think it's caused a bit of confusion in terms of how we've communicated the dates. So yeah, apologies for anybody that did get confused when we put it on the lobby. So the countdown thing, we should have made it clear basically that it's running the countdown up until when it starts. It's not running at the moment. So yeah, I'll put my hand up for that one. But overall, no, I'm pretty happy with it, and I think it's the new logo's cool. I think we just get used to what it's called.
Cool. And in terms of the one of the kind of the main requests that we tend to see is around a toggle, being players being able to, I suppose, govern how they use their double XP. Is that something that we're actively looking at?
It's not off the table. We said at first we didn't want to do that because we felt that it would make the way people played the game much more intensive again, and maybe less enjoyable, because you'd feel obliged to basically micromanage the time you're spending, and turn it off when you're doing the less intensive things, and then turn it on again. And we just felt it would get really fiddly. It's not to say that we won't consider it for the future, and maybe there's other ways we can look at doing that. I was chatting to Mod Warden about it. He's got some really good ideas about maybe it's a kind of bar that builds up as the community kind of contribute to it. So there's other ways we're going to explore it, but I think toggle, we're not sure that would be the right answer. Okay,
fair enough. Yeah, just looking at the chat, I think there's a fair amount of people that are saying a toggle would be a bad idea. There's a few people that are for it, but as I say, I think it's important that we get kind of.
Haven't we got enough toggles?
We have got. I mean, it's
more than enough toggles. I know.
Well, we'll come to
Hypnos
that in a
has got
second,
this.
Hypnos. There is some questions about core experience that we've got coming up that we'll definitely discuss toggles. Okay, so just again trying to address some of the, I suppose, the player feedback that we've had on this in terms of double XP weekend in its original state. A lot of players were suggesting felt like a Christmas, and perhaps if we increase the frequency, is that are we in danger of perhaps making it feel like it's less of an event? This is kind of an open
Yeah,
question, I suppose.
I mean, is it Christmas every day? We'd have to do it, for a lot more frequently than they are now. First thing I'll say is we wanted to try out a different kind of rhythm to this, and this is partly to fit in with other things that are going on around the game. So get into a rhythm of the content, so things like the other events, the bigger releases, the Yak Track, and we felt like every few months these sort of things should come around again. So it's not that we want it to be every day all the time or anything like that. But 6 months is quite a long gap, and again, it felt like to a lot of people, if they missed out, it was a really big deal. And so having it more frequently, eases some of that pressure, and so it's not such a long wait till the next one. I also felt that we wanted to reflect the fact that not everybody's been exposed to the new double XP format. So people who weren't playing the game before Archaeology, they weren't involved in it in February or November. So we wanted to sort of try that out and see how it worked. But yeah, it's really just about getting into a different kind of pattern. In terms of the concern about the XP itself, so I don't want to go into the maths and everything, but basically players are spending about the same amount of time using the double XP as they were before on average, and the amount of double XP hours that is given is about the same. So we were doing 3 of the old style events before, and I think prior to that it was maybe 2, and now even if we move it up to 4, it's about the same overall, and really it's a small amount in in the scale of the average player's kind of life cycle. So I think really it shouldn't be so much about that, because it's not really that much different. It's is it the right way that players can earn that XP? Are there other ways that we could deliver it? I think that's where we should probably explore.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's opportunities to innovate now around it. We've got the format, the platform for it, and that we can further innovate on there without breaking too much.
Okay. Are we just kind of as a follow-up from that, in terms of player behavior, there are certain skills that are obviously trained a lot more frequently over double XP events than others. Yeah. Summoning is a good example of that. Are we concerned that those skills might only get trained during those periods, particularly if players are expecting a higher frequency of double XP events?
Well, I think it's highly unlikely that players would stop training them altogether. I think it's possible that some players would see more value on waiting for certain things, and that might happen. We won't really know until we try this out. But I think it's unlikely that you'll see a big shift. It might be a small shift over time. So we'll be looking at the data that we get back. All the game telemetry tells us this stuff. So we'll look at it in detail. And I think maybe this is something we can report back on maybe in the next stream in a few months and just say, how's it going?
Okay, cool. I'll park double XP live for the time being, and we're going to move on to seasonal events, because obviously since we last spoke we released the Easter event, which was a couple of weeks after the launch of Archaeology. Yeah. I think it's safe to say it got mixed reviews, and there's a number of reasons for that. I think there was obviously the way that Easter fell this year meant it was quite close to Archaeology, and there were a couple of things there were a couple of bugs that we perhaps that were with launch that perhaps we interrupted player experience of it. But what are your takes on it? And I know, Mike, that you guys have done a retro actually, I think in the last in the last few days.
Just last week. So I was with the team when they did that, and we talked about which things should we continue, which things shouldn't we do, which things should we start doing, and there's lots of different suggestions. Things really to watch out for is do things like this intrude or interfere with what players want to be doing, and in this case Archaeology. So we recognize that, and I think the team responded pretty quickly when it was, realised in the game that there were maybe too many spawns of the impegs. So we did a hot fix to address that. But it's one of these things, in some ways we weren't anticipating it to be quite so busy in certain areas. So we've had to kind of make adjustments for that. It's some learnings for definite, and we just need to be conscious of when other things are releasing. But I personally, I think it was a fun event. I think a lot of players also found it fun, and the seasonal events thing, it's really something light to take you away from the deeper kind of stuff in RuneScape, and we want these things to be happening sort of regularly enough and to be rewarding and to be fun, all those kind of things. So we do feel like they should be a part of the game. There are different ways of doing them. You can have sort of like the mini quest style ones. So I think Valentine's this year we did a mini quest that actually came from the live ops team with the Once Upon a Slime quest, so I think really it's about getting the balance right between those different types of events.
Okay, and we've talked about kind of aligning specific types of content to other content that's going in game. Do we foresee something like that happening perhaps with seasonal content as well? I know that, say for instance, April Fools, although it was only in for a day, obviously it tied in quite nicely to the way that we framed archaeology. Is that something that we'd like to look to do again in the future?
Yeah, and I think this is starting to happen naturally. The teams are, sharing much more of what they're doing. They're working closer together, and they're asking, each other for, to give feedback on things like, the events that are in testing when we do reviews and stuff like that. But I mean, the cabbage killing thing was great fun. I mean, it happened in its own kind of instance. It was in a localized area, so that seemed to work pretty well.
Okay, cool. And in terms of this is probably a question more for you, Warden. In terms of where we foresee seasonal events in the vision of the game, what do we look at when we're kind of making those decisions, and what do you foresee seasonal events to be moving forward?
Well, I think they need to be kind of predictable and regular, right? So year after year, you're kind of expecting something around a certain time. We announce it, we make improvements on it. If you don't get a chance to participate in it, there's future chances to participate in it. I think that's pretty important. I know the ones I hear a lot of requests for is strong Halloween showing, strong Christmas showing, right? So I'd say those are big ones that are important to us.
Seeing the beach party come up a little bit in the chat. Mike, I don't know if that's something to see if there's scope. I'm not quite sure, because I know that we took it out for very specific reasons, didn't we? In that it was getting a little bit stale.
I'm not so sure it's taken out for a particular reason. I think, like any of these things, if you do repeat it over and over again, then it can become a bit dry. But yeah, shout Claudia if you want Claudia back, and we'll see.
Okay. Well, there's a challenge for you guys.
I love
okay,
the beach,
and then finally,
by the way, because that was one of the first big projects I worked on. So
there's a lot of Claudias in the chat, so beach, maybe a beach. Okay, and then finally, just on seasonal events and sort of time limited events. Time limited events as well. Is there a suggestion on sort of freshening up the approach to those as well?
Well, yeah, definitely. We're always looking at ways to kind of improve the mechanics. I think we saw some of that in the recent sort of Master Crafting event, which was, changing up the kind of the format a little bit. Personally, I think these things work well when there's variety, and they're not always the same. They're not always the same duration. So, some should take longer, some should be shorter. Again, it's really, it should be rewarding, and it should be the right kind of investment in time without sort of intruding on what people really want to be doing. So we've got some stuff that we're still working on there, and we're going to continue kind of like iterating and innovating on those mechanics. So yeah, hopefully you'll see more of that in future as well.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to move on to the final part of the kind of the live ops section, which is Treasure Hunter. Now I know that obviously this is a subject.
So I just need to make an adjustment to my camera for this section. Okay. There
we go. So we have more drab in his entirety here. So we've discussed when we were in November. We had a pretty kind of big live stream where we were talking about. I think you're oversaturated there. We talked about kind of a period of experimentation for Treasure Hunter. Can you kind of give a little bit more information about the kinds of things that we've been able to do since November, and I suppose where we are going with Treasure Hunter?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we talked about this quite a lot. There were things that we definitely wanted to change and experiment with. So we had a bit of a kind of brainstorm, worked with our new designer, Mod Bowtie, who's doing awesome, and basically came up with some new promotion designs that tested out different levers, if you like, that we could experiment with. So those were things like the level of player choice in the rewards. So you saw that in things like the Diamond Dozen promotion, where you could kind of select the pool of rewards. Things like the level of transparency. How obvious is it to see the prizes you're getting, or is it completely kind of hidden and random? And then that to what level those prizes are randomized, so the level of RNG, if you like. So we tried out various different things. Some of them were more successful than others, and we got good feedback from the community as well over which things they felt were going in the right direction, which were kind of like still confusing. I think so far out of those, the Diamond Dozen ones seem to get the best reaction. So I think it's really that level of control over what you're getting for content you're paying for is really important. So we've still got No, sorry, I was just going to say we've still got a long way to go in terms of determining the future for the monetization and Treasure Hunter particularly, but I think we're a lot closer to understanding it better. We want to look really now about how we innovate in the types of rewards that you receive, so it's not all just the same stuff that you're used to getting. It's like what other types of thing can be valuable to players when they're playing the game, and what type of things can give progress in a way that feels fair. So that's where we're kind of focusing our attention at the moment.
And Warden, just a little bit to add on to that, in terms of the kind of the Treasure Hunter life cycle, I suppose. I know you're a big advocate of making sure that content is as available as possible. I don't know what in terms kind of you want to elaborate on that at all, in terms of particularly with Treasure Hunter.
What do you mean about content available?
In terms of like the life cycle of rewards.
Oh yeah, it's like I'd like to see the rewards being just innovative and refreshing, and not the same kinds of things that player experience time after time. Like to see other things other than, let's say, XP gains, for example. It's not that I don't think that they're important to players, but I think we can offer a lot more variety. And then actually we're going to be bringing our team along on this journey with us pretty soon. Mod Mike is getting ready to kick off some initiatives inside of the RuneScape team. So I think that's where we're going to kind of see a lot of those big changes come out of, and we might have some opportunities to talk to players about that as well.
Okay, and one of the kind of enduring discussion points that we have with players is around the I suppose the different types of monetization that we have within RuneScape, and the balance of different levels of monetization. Do we kind of foresee a time in the future where, say for instance, we're talking about kind of the longer term towards Treasure Hunter, where actually we've changed up the way that we've approached it, reduced the kind of the pressure on, say, that as a revenue stream?
Yeah, it's like you say, it's the balance, and this isn't a case of where you can just turn one thing on and turn something else off. It doesn't quite work like that. So we need to test out which things work and which things don't. Personally, I'd like to see us move into longer form systems that can be around in the game a bit longer than the kind of weekly promotions where everything's kind of changing super regularly, but sometimes it just jars a little bit and it doesn't necessarily reflect what's going on in the rest of the game. So I sort of talked more about that kind of cadence and rhythm earlier. So I'm looking at ways that we could move to something that sits better within the game, but for longer periods. We'd still want to be kind of making things engaging and refreshing, and have new things that drop in and out sort of weekly, but maybe it's not the the kind of weekly promotions that everybody's kind of used to that we've been doing for a while now. So yeah, expect to see some things we'll try out to see how we get that to work. And then there's the other types of stuff, like we brought in things like the yak track, partly to experiment with different mechanics, but also to address things like we're getting a lot of calls to do more cosmetics. But we want to make sure that doesn't become stale. So, we're looking at how we can, again, address some of the issues there around, variety and make it enjoyable and, not quite so janky. And, sometimes it can, get a bit distracting having to do sort of certain things if it takes you away from what you really want to be doing. So, again, the team are kind of all over that at the moment, looking to bring these kind of changes in over time. It might not all happen immediately, but we'll definitely be, kind of smoothing that out as we go along. And I just wanted to add one more thing about like cosmetics, because I know there's been a few occasions recently where the cosmetics haven't been or felt like they were up to par, particularly with the female variants. So I met with the production guys yesterday on that topic, and we're going to make sure that we do better in terms of having specific female variants. We don't want to feel like yeah, those options are being underserved. So, that's something. Again, maybe it won't happen, tomorrow, because these things have to have a sort of production lead time. But we'll ensure that even if it takes us a bit longer to produce certain things, we'll make sure we get back to, having those male and female variants with equal kind of attention.
Yeah, and I'm going to make sure that for the future that we'll have budgets that are there to support more options. So
yeah, you took the final question out of my mouth, Mike, so thank you very much for that, and we can
move
on to the core experience team. So I'm redirecting some of these questions to Mod Hypnos. Obviously I'm going to touch on the iOS closed beta, mentioned at the start of the stream. If you're interested in the closed beta, then check out the news post that was released last Friday, I think it was, but essentially we're aiming to open it on Monday the 11th of May at 5 p.m. That's PM BST. So we'll have to try and make sure that, as I say, everybody is online as much as possible. 5 p.m. seems like the most reasonable time to do that. But I wanted to ask you, Hypnos, what kind of format will the beta look like, and what are we aiming to get from it? Because obviously it's still in testing. We want to try and get as much information as possible. What is exactly are we looking for?
So we're basically we're using the iOS platform for testing at the moment, called TestFlight, and it does give us a little bit of limitation, but it at least gives us a chance to gauge a few different things. For me, one of the things that's important for us to know is the stability of the build itself, right? We have to test it in mass. We have to make sure that it works, inside of players' hands, from a larger amount than just a few people in the office that are actually testing, iOS. And unfortunately, inside of the office, you got mostly Android players. This gives us definitely a good opportunity to look at not only the stability of the build, but like what kind of devices does everybody kind of log into for RuneScape when it comes down to iOS. It'll also give us a better read on how we kind of like redirect where some of the issues might be, especially when it comes down to screen size and ratio compatibility, things like that. So it's good. We're gonna have a lot of learnings through this. It might be a little bit weird for some of the people who are getting access to the build, because they do have to use TestFlight, which is the platform that Apple uses to test a lot of their gaming apps. But it's pretty easy, and we will be giving you instructions to be able to get on there. So it's pretty straightforward.
Nice one. And you mentioned TestFlight. We have 9,900 slots to be kind of divvied out over the course of at the moment, undefined period of time, but we're hoping over the course of a few weeks. 9,900 slots, is that why particularly that number?
Yeah, so that is a platform limitation. Technically we have 10,000, but we have to be a little bit selfish on some of those things so that we can keep it inside of the house so we can test things ourselves. But yeah, like because we're limited to that 10,000, like we have to be kind of really smart on when we put the groups out there to get access to it, and very importantly, we want everybody who actually wants access to this particular build like a chance to do that, which is why we actually want to do this in stages. So even though we're actually limited with the number of people we can get access to the build, we still want to try to get it in as many of your hands as possible who really have been waiting the longest for the iOS build.
Yeah, and I've seen a few people asking, can they do it on iPads or tablet? Or, well, I mean, that is the only iOS tablet. But as far as I'm aware, this is for all Apple devices.
Yeah, that is correct, and we are testing it on tablet as well. We are, it's a preference thing, but I've been accustomed to actually playing like in landscape mode. So the actual function of the camera itself is slightly more ideal. But what we're doing now is adjustments so that when you're actually in a 4:3 screen, that the positioning of the character is actually in a more ideal spot. But it's going to be important for us to get feedback like that so that we can optimize it for both ratios basically. And the feedback in general is going to be really critical for this particular build, especially the qualitative feedback. Everybody out there, like, it's going to be really important. Once you get your hands on this, please give us as much feedback as possible. There's obviously some telemetry we can read on our end, but I think for us, the qualitative feedback is also really important there.
Absolutely. I know, Mod Warden, you've got Dasher at 6 o'clock, so I'm going to try and finish mobile. We might go into core experience after 6 o'clock, but I just want to ask one more question on mobile. So in terms of the future plan for mobile, what other milestones are we looking to hit before we get to a full commercial launch with it? Obviously, iOS is a really big step forward, but what else have we got between now and FCL?
So one of the key things here, and I'm probably going to talk about this a little bit on the core experience side of things, but the UI itself has been like a really kind of an interesting challenge for us. And I think when we look at the game's viability, a lot of the interactability on certain areas of the game itself. So one of the key things for us in particular is how do we make it so that the login screen and allowing like players to actually get into the game easily and more straightforward. That's a really important thing for us. So that alongside a lot of the other UI stuff is one of the things that we really want to finish and get out of the way and be happy with before we end up going live. So we're definitely that's really like kind of high on our priority list. And once those are out, we're basically going to look at it and evaluate it and see whether or not it's actually fit to go live.
Fantastic. Okay, so Warden, I don't know if you're looking to leave dead on 6. If that's the case, do you have any kind of parting words before we go into the core experience side of things?
No, I do have a hard stop, unfortunately, and I'm sorry I can't stay any longer today. I get a lot of questions about haircut here. My son cut my hair, and I've learned how to cut my hair a little bit in COVID land as well. So.
Nice. Okay. Well, on that note, thanks for joining, Warden. And I'm sure if there are any questions that come out of it, we'll collate them and we'll send them to you afterwards.
Sounds good. Bye, guys.
See you later. Take care. And then there were 3. That was very good.
Slick. Who did that? Yeah.
Well done, Modspear. Our genius behind the scenes. Okay, so we're going to move on to core experience now. I think we have a graphic that we can show for this. Modspear again. Oh, on the money. There we go. So this is the kind of thing that we were talking about on at RuneFest. So these are the 4 things. The 8 things. I think that Mod Pips was talking about at kind of the end of the RuneFest keynote last year, and I think we have another graphic. We are, I think, 6, 4, 8 from them so far. So we talked about canopy cut. Well, since we've last spoken, anyway, canopy cutout, object highlighting, and made it into game. The feedback, I think, even for people who perhaps don't necessarily like it themselves, appreciate that actually it helps other players, and that obviously appreciate the togglescape. But I suppose what I wanted to ask was actually, how has the process been to get, I suppose, those 6 things out of the door to begin with?
It's been an interesting experience. I think one of the key things that, I don't necessarily have to remind everybody, but we're basically running on a game that is, has some legacy technology to it, and what we want to do is make sure that the game is actually viable from a modernized kind of looking future facing standpoint. And there's obviously some challenges there, but there've been a lot of interesting learnings on the way, for sure. I mean, the thing is, a lot of these things have been incited, due to like the changes that we want on the mobile side. For example, like the canopy cutout, the object highlighting in particular. Like for me, it was really important that from a mobile perspective, it's viable to actually complete quests when you're using a mobile device, and that was kind of a key part of that. But along the way, we're always finding kind of new things that we can actually improve. But at the same time, there's some very interesting kind of obstacles that we do have to face, especially for the ones that you've actually listed, out there for those 8. And yeah, it's been quite a journey, and it's been some months since Mod Pip had discussed that in RuneFest. But we're getting there. It's coming along. I think we've got some great achievements so far. Much of what is player facing, but there's a lot of things on the back end that we've been working on, that we've been improving, that may not be as visible from a player perspective, that we're actually also really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we kind of have, I suppose, that of those 8, probably 2 of the most challenging left on the plate, and challenging for a number of reasons, both technically and also I suppose just even looking at the chat right now, when we were talking about tick or fast tick or whatever, it's dividing. It's a dividing thing. It's a divisive thing that some players really want. Some players don't want quite so much. And obviously we've shown client-side prediction as one of the things on the live stream so far, and the feedback to that was I think quite valuable for players to see that. I wondered if you could perhaps give us an update on those 2 projects in particular, so the tick removal and the client-side prediction.
Yeah, and from your list, those are easily 2 of the biggest things that are going to pose the biggest challenge to tackle. But at the same time, I do feel that from a gameplay perspective and from a responsiveness standpoint, like those 2 things make literally the biggest difference there in terms of the feel. But it's from a technology standpoint, that there have been some challenges for sure. But I think more interestingly, for me, when I played the prototype for client-side prediction, it felt good. Like it felt like, oh, this is the RuneScape. Like I want, and for me it was I wanted to push as much as I can to actually get that inside of the game, and it was great. It was basically like night and day feel, and it was just the client-side prediction, right? That alongside the fast tick would have been like just that. The feel of those 2 together is quite different. But that difference is something that I wholeheartedly acknowledge from a user perspective as well. Like what we want to make sure of is that any change we do that is that impactful to the gameplay itself, we won't do if it comes down to affecting the fundamental gameplay from a player perspective. And some of the feedback that we actually got when we did our internal playtest reflected that to some degree, right? Because like with client-side prediction in particular, there had been sort of a challenge to be able to keep it consistently on throughout the overall gameplay experience for the user, but there were instances where we actually have to deactivate it. Now, we really have to talk about what the lesser evil is, right? Just not actually having it at all, and making it so that the experience is consistent versus having it on in some places and making it so that the experience is inconsistent but feels better for the majority of the time. And that's a tricky thing to actually decide to do. So what's going to be important as the next step is really to kind of get this in the player hands and to see how they feel about it. And we're planning to do a beta for it at some point. I can't promise that it's going to be anytime soon or anything like that, but there's still some work to be had so that we can actually set up a proper beta server so that our players can actually get a feel themselves to see what it's like. And I imagine the feedback is actually going to be really interesting because it may also be fairly polarizing from a player perspective. But from the fast tick side, that's something that's even more tricky, right? Not only is that also controversial because like the feel of RuneScape itself is, to some degree may even speak to what RuneScape is, right? And that's something that we've considered. But from the technical side of things, there's a lot more to that, especially when we're looking at kind of the legacy tech that's been there for the last 20 years. So, we don't have plans in the near future to get the fast tick inside of the player hands, but at some point in time, and again, I can't promise that it's going to be soon, we will want to eventually test the client-side prediction side of things.
Okay. That's a very comprehensive answer. Thanks very much for that. I had a lot of questions that I was going to ask, but I think you've answered quite a lot of them. So I'll just rattle through a couple more that I've seen. In terms of the community over the last kind of couple of days, I've seen actually there was a thread on Reddit, sort of, I think it was yesterday, around maybe the day beforehand, around new player experience, UI, particularly around the settings. And is that something that I know we're talking about potentially new players coming in for mobile. Obviously, we've had a group of people come in for archaeology. Is this something that we're looking at as a priority right now? Is it kind of the UI and, as I say, particularly around the settings area?
So, I didn't want to spoil it, but one of our guys actually put out. This is interesting because we actually had finished it before we got that feedback on the social side of things, which I guess speaks to us knowing fundamentally what some of the core issues are inside of the game. Sometimes it does take us some time to get some of these fixes out, but to speak to the settings menu, for example, it's been one of those critical things on our side that we have continued discussing. This will continue to be a thing for us to actually improve. For now, what we've done is actually reorganize things so that the things that are a little bit more critical for players to access are more accessible. That's basically going to be the first step on the settings menu. We've been playing around with certain ideas, which we're still looking to kind of scope things out a little bit. Things like search functions and things like that. Inside of that menu. But what we want to do is make sure that we want to see the effects of actually kind of reorganizing the menu itself to see if we can just make it just less cluttered, more accessible, a little bit more logical when it comes down to how we're categorizing things. And we're going to see how that impacts and improves things, and then we're probably going to take it to kind of the next steps after that. But again, to speak to that, the UI for us, especially for those teams that I'm kind of overseeing, it's always at the top of the list. UI has always been a big thing. Every time players talk about it, every time they talk about it from a new user perspective, it's great. I'm actually really happy that our engaged users have the degree of empathy from a new user standpoint to know about, to know and realize how cluttered it is for them. And it's something that we're continually trying to address. The settings menu, for example, isn't directed specifically from a new user perspective. That really is more for the engaged users so that it's easier for them to find things that they actually need to find. From a new user standpoint, we're looking at things when it comes down to really the beginning of the game, which is a continued sort of focus on our work. I know a lot of people have noticed the path that we kind of laid out inside of Berthorpe after users get out of Tutorial Island, for example. Those kind of things we're continuing to improve from a new player perspective. But that does include the UI and kind of how busy that is and how overwhelming that is. So we're really kind of trying to fix it for both kind of users.
Okay, fantastic. And I have one more question for you at this stage. So, and it's one that I think is probably what I've asked everybody so far. In terms of what we're working on at the moment, obviously there are lots of different plates that you're spinning from a core experience perspective. Is there anything that players aren't aware of at the moment, hasn't been announced at RuneFest, we've not discussed it in live streams, that players that we can kind of give any more information about, anything that we can kind of either tease or talk about at this stage?
On the spot, huh? Some bit of a tease, huh? So I don't know how exciting it is when I talk about things like UI and UI scaling and making it so that but from a tech perspective, like those things to us are actually extremely exciting, because not only do we want to make it so that the UI is actually a little bit more unified from mobile and PC, as some of you noticed and will notice, is that the UI actually looks a little bit different between the two. So making it so that the layouts are a little bit more similar and a little bit unified, and we're optimizing the UX for a lot of those screens, that's really important for us. Making it so that the fonts, we don't actually just have to zoom in to make it so that it's as big as possible on the screen. We're actually making it so that it's actually like scalable. Now we're currently working on things and looking to find solutions for things like that. It's kind of ongoing work, but we're kind of just chipping away at that bit by bit. One of the interesting things that we've actually kind of kicked off is something that we're actually calling long distance pathfinding. And for us, it's actually been really interesting on the technology side, because we've always been limited to kind of portions of the grid that we can work with inside of RuneScape in the map area. To kind of connect all of them together, right? So, for example, the usage of this would be like the path that we have for users in Berthorpe. We want that little breadcrumb trail to last kind of a further distance, basically, right? When you actually set a marker down on the world map, for example, you would be able to actually see the path from there to that marker that's actually pretty far away. And we do feel that, especially on mobile, it will help kind of augment that experience so that the user can focus a little bit more on the tasks that we're giving them, versus giving them more trouble to actually get to the task that we want to give them, right? And we feel that RuneScape is actually better represented in in servicing the skills and getting new players engaged in the skills and showing them where to get to those areas, versus allowing them to kind of exhaust themselves to figure that out on their own. So that's one of the big cool kind of tech things that we're working on at the moment. I'm not sure how cool like players think that is, but that's definitely one of the things on our plate that we don't see like necessarily a short-term end for, but that is something that's on the horizon.
I think you do yourself a disservice, Hypnos. I think the players are looking at the chat are pretty excited for some of those things. I think UI scaling in particular had a lot of PogChamps in the chat. So I think what we'll probably try and do is we'll try and, as we make more progress with some of this work, we'll try and get it onto more live streams. We'll do some dev blogs, that kind of thing, to kind of take you guys on the journey that we're going on as well. Because I think a lot of this stuff has the danger of kind of going behind the scenes, and what I'd love it to be is something that actually you guys are all kept in the loop for throughout the process, and you have a chance to kind of, as Hypnos was saying, around sort of beta and those kind of processes, actually have that kind of input into the finished product as well, because we want something that ultimately is going to be sort of the best for everybody, if possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like the long-term things we're working on the tech side to improve that is critical to get the feedback from that. But at the same time, for like the smaller quality of life things that we're doing through Ninja is also really critical for us to make sure that day to day, from a player perspective, that we're always basically getting that feedback so that we're targeting appropriately, right?
Nice one. Okay, so what I'll do then, we have a few player questions that I'm going to ask now, and then we'll kind of sum up, and we'll perhaps. I know we said we do these quarterly. I'm going to see about if we can get something that's perhaps a little bit of a follow up to some of the questions that players might be asking as well in the next couple of weeks. So if there are any additional questions, then we'll grab the three of you again at some point and see if we can get you on to take on some of the questions, because I'm aware that we are quite significantly over time as it is at the moment. So just
I'm not going anywhere. Are you, Hypnos?
Well, let's do it.
I've got a personal training session coming on at 7, so I need to finish before then. But so in terms of the seasonal events or seasonal content, that kind of thing. So this is probably more a Mike thing than Hypnos thing. What happened to winter weekends, and is there anything that we're going to be doing to kind of bring those back in a different form, or anything that we can do to kind of, I suppose, build out the engagement in a slightly different way to, say, a Double XP Live?
Yeah, we did try some different things last year actually, but I'll be honest, they didn't always make that much impact. So we always have to weigh up, how much resource goes into things like that versus what you get out of it, and is the cost worth it in that sense. We just didn't really see the results. We tried the Voice of Seren thing last year. I think that confused people. I don't think it was, we sort of made it clear how it worked properly. But I do think there's value in the variety of doing things like that. I just think we've got to find the right thing for the right time. Sorry, that wasn't a great answer, but it's not currently on the plan. But I think I'm not ruling it out. Put it that way.
Okay. I think there's a question about what will happen to the leftover Easter assets in game as well. I think there's a job in to fix those, as far as I'm aware.
They will be removed. I've asked somebody for the date. I'm not sure off the top of my head when they're going out, but it will be fairly soon.
Okay, and final question, and this one's going to be directed at Hypnos. So how do we plan to combat players using multiple phones to try and get access to the iOS beta?
Yeah, that's a question. I actually... we are actually limiting it in a manner that only allows a certain amount at a time, and I think this is, this is definitely where some of the limitations that we do have don't necessarily allow us in an easy way, at least from the tech front, to block some of the things that could actually happen when it comes down to allowing users the access to this iOS beta. So. My ask from my perspective, I get on there as soon as humanly possible, play, and hopefully we'll actually have enough to give us the numbers we really want. But ultimately, for the things that we can't fight, I want you guys to know, and I just want to remind you guys that since we're doing this, the launch is on the horizon. So for those who actually don't get into the to the build this time around, for whatever reason, we are working as hard as possible to get the build out to the world as soon as possible. So be patient, sit tight, and we are working on it.
The other thing to note as well is it's tied to Apple IDs as well, rather than devices, so or RuneScape accounts. So it's tied to an Apple ID as well. So if you have multiple devices, then you need multiple accounts as well. So if you've got an iPad and an iPhone, for instance, you'll get access on both of those things with the same Apple ID. So that might assuage some fears.
Yeah, it's true. And
okay.
it's not a full mitigation, but that will help.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Well, I'm gonna just do some summary points for everybody who might not have been here at the start of the live stream. So, remind that Double XP Live is happening this weekend. Kicks off at midday on Friday. And that's a bank holiday for all those Brits out there. So, stay inside, stay safe. Get double XP live, even if the weather's beautiful. And then the iOS iOS closed beta is coming on Monday, the 11th of May. We're aiming to launch everything at 5 p.m. So make sure you've set your alarms in advance of that. Again, if there is any change to that, we will let you know as soon as we humanly can. And there are a couple of things that need to happen our end before everything is fully confirmed. But we'll let you know if there are any changes to that as soon as we can before the end of this week. So thank you very much, guys, for joining me today. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you very much, Hypnos.
Pleasure. Anytime.
And the aim for these is to do these kind of quarterly, bring you guys on quarterly, but we might see if we can perhaps bring you on for some sort of more player question related bits and pieces in the near future as well. So thank you very much, guys. Everybody watching at home, thank you very much for tuning in, and stay safe, everybody, and have a very, very good rest of your weeks. Goodbye.
Be safe.